Hi, everybody. Tom Zulist here from Singer Farm Naturals and Innocence Cannabis. And this is the second class about understanding how the human body works. As we talked about last week, we are superorganisms, and we have this living system within us that I want to talk about first, which is our gut microbiome. And I'm going to have a little presentation right here to be able to explain exactly what transpires when we put things into the beginning of the tube, and then as it goes through the tube, what that process is, and what that effect that has on the human body. So, go to the next slide. The human digestive system is made up of all these different components, and at the very front, we have the mouth, which goes through the esophagus, and then it goes through the small intestine, first through the stomach, then through the small intestine, and then the large intestine, which kind of encompasses the whole area. Okay. The interesting thing is that the numbers on the right are the numbers, the total population of the microbes that reside in each area of the gut. So the stomach, for example, is 10 to the second. What that means is add 2 zeros. So if we add 2 zeros, it's between 1,000 and 10,000 microbes that totally exist in the stomach. When we go down to the small intestine, the number expands, as you can see. As we get lower, it keeps getting larger until we get all the way down to the colon. And that's where we have massive populations and huge numbers that assist us in both human health, physical and mental balance, as well as nutrition. So the action is really down in the lower area. There's the actual numbers. You're looking in the large intestine, those are big numbers, 10 trillion to 10, I guess 1,000 trillion. Big numbers. And these are living organisms. And we have control over what those populations are, what species, how they can contribute to human health. If we do it haphazardly, guess what? We can have those kinds of numbers of dysbiosis going on inside of us because we're feeding the wrong tribes. So we have all different kinds of activity going on inside of us. We have bacteria, which we hear about. We have fungi. Fungi are a different species type. We have protists. We have one cell. The name is eukaryote, I believe. And then viruses, which are really different because a virus is basically a hijacking code that takes possession of a certain bacteria and then changes its function. So it's an opportunistic sensor that comes into our system. The way viruses are best described to me is that 99.9% of them are very helpful, and the remainder are the ones that hijack and take over some of our systems and some of the bacteria in our body. But viruses are needed because they're constantly sensing the environment around us. So our understanding of viruses is, that they're all bad, and it's not the case. It's part of the ecology. It's part of the superorganism. So we need to understand what a balance would be to be able to keep everything in check so that we don't get out of balance, which is called dysbiosis. Look at how complex just one cell is. Now, we have between 100 trillion and 1,000 trillion of these little organisms, and look at how intricate they are. They're like like separate organisms, and the beautiful part about these is that they have DNA, but they have one thing that is different. They can swap DNA from one bacteria to another, and we can't do that. So they're very adaptive, and they can really change how they function and what they do. So this part of life is always changing, and this is what's within us. These are some of the best probiotics out there. Lactobacillus is one that we talk about. It's usually in yogurts. My favorite is coconut yogurt loaded with lactobacillus. Lactobacillus has been known to elevate mood. Some of the studies showed that of a test group that were given 1 to 2 servings of yogurt per day over a 28-day period, every single one of the participants had an uplift in their mood. So it was quite conclusive. The thing is, if we're doing yogurt, we need to look deeper. What are the colony sizes? And, we want to make sure there's no sugar in there, because sugar is going to feed other bacteria that are almost going to counter the good bacteria we're bringing in there. So we need to be aware of exactly what we're bringing into the system, because we're bringing food along with it in the form of sugar that could really be detrimental. Bifidobacteria are more of the ones that digest vegetables, like the yogurt or like the kimchis, sauerkrauts. And Saccharomyces boulardii is a beautiful bacteria that it's used quite a bit for cleansing the gut. When we have an issue called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria growth, overgrowth, one of the cures for that, it's usually candida that ends up being overpopulated in the small intestine, causing a lot of issues. So one of the ways that we biologically change that environment is we take Saccharomyces boulardii and we introduce it into the system. And what it does is it crowds out and kind of overpowers the candida and pushes it down the system, down the tube. And Saccharomyces is kind of like a nomad. They hang out for a little bit, and once their job is done, they move on. So the thing about candida is that we have a candida overgrowth. It causes a lot of mood swings. It's usually fed by sugars, by processed breads, and high carbohydrate, high sugar type foods. So if we get that, some people think, well, we take an antibiotic, we could kill it. You can't kill it, because if you kill candida, then the toxins, the toxins produced from that bacteria dying are actually very bad for the human body. So instead, this is a very nice way to passively push them through without agitating them, and then let them go on downstream. So really interesting bacteria. So, we talk about all these diseases of this tube system. And one of them that we hear a lot about is celiac disease. And when we look at the way a healthy, normal lining would look like on the bottom right, everything looks nice and uniform and structured well and very healthy. And then when we look at the other one, it's like the structure is collapsing. It's not functioning. It's gone through a lot of trauma. Now, this is what we look at when we look at it closer. The one on the left is exactly the way the stomach lining should look like, the large intestinal or small intestinal lining, and very tight junctions. Now, this whole lining, which is almost 1.5 tennis courts in size, is only 1 cell thick. Now, the drawing on the right shows where we have damage to some of those cells. When that happens, it allows different food particles or microbes to actually get right up against the immune system, blood side of the human system. That's why when we talk about immune issues, it's estimated somewhere between 70% to 90% of our immune system is in our guts lining and that barrier that we're looking at right here. And that's what we have. We have a leaky gut just in a small area, and 90%, 95% could be fine, but a small area. And now we're talking about everything from brain fog to mood disorders, because the immune system is going haywire and you're getting all kinds of fight, and flight responses throughout the body. And this is how it works. This bottom area where you see these spider-like creatures, these are cells. These are, I call them my favorite cell. If I could only be one cell, that would be a dendritic cell. Because they get this cool job of sticking their antenna through that one cell thick gap. What they do is they sense what is on the other side. And we don't quite know how they do this, but we believe that it may be with magnetism and trying to decipher the DNA. We're not quite sure, but when they come back, if it is something that is normally found in the database of the immune system, it will produce a killer R cell, which is an anti-inflammatory cell. If, however, it finds a food particle up there, then it produces a killer T cell that will go after any kind of cell that has that exact same DNA print. So the first one is a killer R. If there's, it's actually a anti-inflammatory if everything looks good, and if everything looks bad, and it senses a food particle or bacteria close to that gut wall, it's going to record that, and it's going to put the immune system on tilt. We've got to defend the barracks here. We've got invaders at the door. It's now calling on all your systems to go into fight or flight, fight the enemy. We've got a problem. And on the left, what happens in the gut is that if we have the right bacteria on the left, we have what's called a homeostasis, or a balanced ecosystem where everything is working. We have a beneficial benefit in that we're feeding microbes. The microbes are breaking food down. They're producing neurochemicals and nutrition for the human body. Everything is going well. All of a sudden, we look on the right side, and this bacteriosis is when we start putting all of these different foods into the body, and we start changing the composition of the colonies, and all the good guys now are minors, and you see there's very few of them, and all the bad guys, the parasitic ones, the ones that cause issues in the human body, they've now exploded in population because the foods that we're eating with mindlessness of what we're doing are feeding the wrong guys. And you can see it just doesn't happen all at once. It slowly starts happening, and it kind of flows in a direction. And the opposite is exactly true as well. We can take it from number 4 all the way back down to number 1. That's all we have to do, is we have to have understanding how the whole system works. One of the worst things we could do if we're in a state of number 4 and we start thinking about it and shaming ourselves and creating all kinds of anxiety, we're going to be aiding that dysbiosis system, because that's even putting our immune system on more pressure, because all these systems are related. So, prebiotics versus probiotics. Prebiotics are the foods that feed the microbes, and probiotics are living foods that actually are full of the microbes living within them. And the things that I like to include are at least 1 living microbial food into my diet per day. On a good day, I'll have 3. A couple tablespoons of sauerkraut or kimchi, some non-dairy yogurt, maybe some kombucha, just constantly being aware that, if I am aware of what I'm putting in my tube, then I'm in control of who I'm feeding, and then I know that these microbes will take care of me. The killers are GMO foods, stress. I can't tell you how much stress plays a role in this. Our society has taught us to constantly criticize and judge ourselves as to how we should be eating and what we should be doing. What we need to do is we need to care about ourselves and relax and realize that we have these amazing bodies, but we need to take responsibility for them. That's it. And one of the other things that was said to me is that the definition of anxiety is over-exaggerating the dangers and underestimating our ability to handle them. And that's the full definition of anxiety, because if we look at our life, no matter what we've gone through it. But when we start thinking about it, it causes stress in the head. And that immediately causes a lot of gut dysbiosis, because then we're causing the fight or flight system. The immune system is busy now. We're stressed out. The bacteria know that. So digestion is actually halted when we're under traumatic stress, because digestion takes a lot of energy, and the body's system is that when we're under stress, it needs to give everything to, our fight or flight response mode. Sugar, alcohol. Alcohol, I know it's accepted in society. I'm a recovering alcoholic of 24 years. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't stop drinking alcohol. The health aspects are just, there aren't enough positives to outweigh the negatives to alcohol. It's as simply as I see it. In moderation, people can, everybody's different, and I'm not here to judge, but everybody do what's best for them. To me, my life is beyond my wildest dreams without alcohol. It doesn't consume one part of my brain. And if I want to get relaxation, I can use that using the endocannabinoid system and a friend of mine called THC that I depend on when I do need that. So it's a much healthier alternative. So that's the foods that we should be consuming. None of these can be digested by the human body. If we did not have microbes, they would go in and come out the same way. But because we have microbes, we're able to take all of those foods. And garlic and onions are two of the most powerful ones. The beauty of the garlic and the onions is that they feed the microbes that become the enforcers of the environment in the gut. The guys that shouldn't be living in high populations are knocked down in size by these microbes that are fed. That's their favorite food. So what I try to do is I try to find the favorite foods of the different microbe groups and be putting those in my tube and constantly thinking about it. So it's a different way of looking at food. That this wasn't part of my way of looking at it my whole life until I understood the reality of what we are and who we are and what optimum health is. And that's a miracle right there. That's where the living brain is. And that's where it all happens. About 5 pounds of microbes containing 99 times more DNA than the human body, all in that tube. And when we look at a lot of the human disease that we see, it's deficiencies in that 6-foot tube that are the initial cause of what eventually expresses itself in the form of a disease that modern medicine talks about today. From here, I want to show a quick, short YouTube video that I find extremely helpful. This is a video I found about 4 or 5 years ago, and it really talks about how magical the digestive system is. So.
We know that many plant foods benefit our health. Scientists now believe one reason for this lies with the gut microbiome, the bacteria in your intestines. Your microbiome is nourished by meals like this, rich in one type of dietary fiber called resistant starch. Resistant starch can't be digested by your body, but instead becomes food for your gut bacteria. Most starch is easily digested. Starch is dissolved in the small intestine and then absorbed by your body. providing you with energy and nutrients. The remaining non-digestible portion is called resistant starch. The resistant starch continues its journey through your gut and arrives at the large intestine. We see that the resistant starch has become exposed to the healthy bacteria of the gut microbiome. This species of bacteria specialize in breaking down the resistant starch. This breakdown process provides the bacteria with the fuel they need to survive. As they use the starch for energy, they release small carbohydrate molecules. The neighboring bacteria feed on these carbohydrates. As the bacteria feed, they excrete even smaller molecules as waste. One of the final waste products is called butyrate, an energy source for your body. As the butyrate builds up, it is absorbed by the large intestine. The presence of butyrate encourages blood to flow into the vessels of the large intestine, keeping the tissue healthy. If your diet includes enough resistant starch, these cells will use butyrate as their main source of energy. Here, we can see the molecular surface of one of the intestinal cells. The surface is covered in special proteins that actively pump butyrate molecules into the cell. Once inside, they can be harvested for energy. In addition, butyrate has other benefits. Intestinal cells are sensitive to DNA damage caused by environmental factors. This cell's DNA has been damaged, resulting in a mutation. More damage could accumulate over time as the cell divides, which could lead to colorectal cancer. But a steady supply of butyrate allows the DNA damage to be more easily detected, and the cell can activate a suicide program in response. Because the damaged cell destroys itself, it can't progress to form a cancer. A starved microbiome is unable to protect you from cancer. By eating foods rich in resistant starch, you can nourish your microbiome and improve your health.
Right, and now what we're going to do is we're going to switch right into the next phase, which is talking about, we talked about the microbiome, which to me is the latest understanding of human health, and the system that I consider to be one of the most amazing discoveries of how our body works is the endocannabinoid system. The beauty is that the microbes and the endocannabinoid system, along with the human body system, all work in unison. They're all tied together. So we have questions about people with celiac disease, and we see what's taking place there. Well, CBD and THC, depending on the issue and depending on the person's receptor system, tend to ease the pain and the conditions of some of those issues that are taking place. What they're doing is they're modulating the immune system. Remember that whole immune system that we have? Well, CBD in particular are what they call CB2 receptors that are throughout our whole immune system. So we're regulating the immune system when we're using CBD, and whether that immune system is because of gut dysfunction or some other issue taking place, it's going to start to react and cause that system to go back to a state of homeostasis. So CBD is non-psychoactive. The actual term is psychotropic. Psychotropic is a term used to change our perception of reality and time, and it's non-psychotropic. The Psychedelic is another term, which is seeing things that don't happen. THC is psychotropic or psychoactive, as some people call it. My term is psychotropic. At any rate, when you take CBD, it's not hitting the receptors that affect your perception of reality and time. Instead, it's actually doing something which is more profound. It's hitting your receptor for your conscious mind. And the only way you can have homeostasis in your conscious mind is being in the present moment, because thoughts of the past and the future are not real. They're just neurological pathways, either projected or memories. And when we go down those pathways, we have emotion, but reality is only the present moment. Nothing else is real. So CBD makes the path of least resistance, being in the present moment. And as you could see, this endocannabinoid system that is throughout the body regulates everything from motivation, the reward system, thermoregulation, stress response, metabolism, appetite, mood, pain, energy, sensation, inflammation, muscle control. All of those systems, that's the endocannabinoid system. It has an interaction. It is as integrated and as functional as a microbial system in the human body, and they're all related. This is one of my favorite charts, and this is just a small portion of the location of the various CB1 and CB2 receptor systems. This is probably quite outdated because this knowledge is gaining on a daily basis. We believe there may be a CB3 system. We don't quite understand all of the workings of the human body. We just know that the way I view it is that instead of the brain being in charge of every single system and regulating it, it's kind of decentralized computing where each system has a receptor head, and when the brain senses a deficiency in one of those systems, it produces a cannabinoid, and we'll look at this next chart, that is like a lock and a key. On the right-hand side, that's a cannabinoid receptor. So the body produces an endocannabinoid to unlock that receptor and energize it to produce energy to go back to a state of homeostasis. It's kind of causing a system that is stuck out of balance to now start to balance itself. And their exact lock and key. So if it's releasing an enzyme to try to help the immune system, it's not going to go to, let's say, the reproductive system because the key won't fit. The phytocannabinoids fit exactly the same lock and key system that the human body uses for its own balancing of its systems. And there's a chart showing exactly that. That's what we're doing when we're introducing all of these cannabinoids into the human system. And as you can see, the endocannabinoid system has certain cannabinoids. Anandamide is considered to be the bliss hormone. That is one of the emotions we feel when we're in love or we're very grateful. And on the right-hand side are some of the phytocannabinoids that are present in the cannabis plant. And as you can see, THC, the one in the red, is only one of many. We've got about 10 listed here. If you look at CBG, for example, CBG has been found to enhance anandamide production in the human body, which is a bliss hormone. And that lets us feel less depressed, more focused, able to handle setbacks throughout our day. And it's interesting because we used to, and some of us may still have, a bacteria in our gut microbiome called L. reuteri that was responsible for producing a neurochemical that would also increase anandamide in the human system. However, because of our lack of understanding of what's going on within us, we wiped out with amoxicillin a lot of keystone varieties that used to provide mental balance to us. And now we're relying on their secondary systems because of our lack of understanding and knowledge of how the microbial system works within us. And there again we have, it's a very specific way that everything comes together. And not only every human being, but also every mammal, including fish, are designed the same way through nature. And there we have another picture showing exactly what happens when we introduce this cannabinoid into the human system. And the list of these cannabinoids, we have CBD. We grow plants that have that. There's a new cannabinoid we started growing called CBDV. Very interesting cannabinoid, twice as effective as CBD for seizures. So we have found that to be very helpful with other conditions as well, tends to be more involved with the neuropathy type system in the human body. That's what we're finding. CBG is just a really cool cannabinoid. I love it for focus. The analogy I give people is that as you're going through your day, and if something comes up, it could be either something very upsetting or something that you can get by with. And the way we react is the net sum of the neurological chemicals in our brain at that given moment. When we have CBG in the system, what it does is it tips that in the favor of, hey, it's not that bad. It's kind of like when you're in love and things come up that are not expected, it's not a big deal. But if you're having a bad day and the same thing comes up, it could be the end of the world. CBC, really interesting cannabinoid. We're now learning it increases the absorption rate of some of the other cannabinoids. Can't wait to start getting some of that and working with that. CBN we've been working with for 3 years, and it is amazing for sleep. Interesting thing, it doesn't cause drowsiness, but is the most used cannabinoid for sleep. My theory is that what it does is THC can sometimes upcreate the creativity or the thought of the brain, and CBN kind of down regulates that area of the brain. At least that's my observation, which would make sense because then, if we go to bed, we don't want to be thinking about everything. We want to get into a deep state and let the mind figure everything out for us. It's more capable of doing it than we are. That's what the brain does when we go to sleep. That's what it's meant to do. THCA is a non-psychotropic version of THC. It is in the plant form when it's not heated, and it is non-psychotropic. THCV is a new cannabinoid we grew in the last 2 years here. We're still experimenting with it, but it has a lot of research related to potentially helping with Alzheimer's and possibly with weight loss, something possibly curbing appetite, working with the metabolism system. Fascinating research coming out in that cannabinoid. And we do have products in the market now that we're getting feedback on. Next one. And then we have the second part of the cannabis plant, which are the terpenes. And the way that I like to describe it is that the cannabinoids are the main way that we cause direction of what we're trying to achieve. So like, if we're doing a plant that has a lot of CBDV in it and very little THC, that would be the driving. We're looking maybe for the neurological system or something that was causing seizures in the human body. And then the terpenes are kind of like the final steering because they can control things, depending on which terpene, everything from mood to all different functions of the human body. They're again, another layer of the way that the human body regulates. It's a very complex yet simple superorganism that we are part of, and all of the inputs that we put change the responses throughout the systems. And then we get into flavonoids as well, which are, again, further properties. This plant is the most epigenetically connected to the human genome, meaning the term epigenetics is how does the environment and or our food affect our DNA expression. And the cannabis plant is the most epigenetically connected plant to the human genome of any plant on the planet. Garlic is the second most epigenetically. That's why those two foods tend to have an awful lot of healing abilities, and those healing abilities are attributed to the ability of the human body to have its DNA express and that way be able to cure the dysbiosis happening, whatever system it's in. And of course, animals have a CBD system as well. And it's pretty cool because they're not prejudiced. They just love us, and whatever we give them, they take, as long as it doesn't taste too bad. And next one. It helps with all kinds of issues. So we have some for dogs for anxiety. And what's happening when, let's say, the dog gets in the car and all of a sudden it's all worked up because it's in the car and maybe it had a bad experience at one time, or it just didn't like being in the car. When we give the dog CBD, kind of calms that fight and flight response. Lets the dog be in the present moment. Everything is okay. Reduces anxiety. Helps the dog's DNA expression for fighting cancer. You know, can relieve pain. How does it relieve pain? Well, it's working with the immune system. The immune system is responsible for a lot of that. Inflammation, nervous system, you know, the systems are the same as a human being. And all kinds of issues. I can tell you a couple stories. We had a woman who came in here with a horse and said, you know, I decided to try CBD oil and nothing else has worked. And they said the horse isn't going to live very long. So we started with CBG, which tends to have some amazing capabilities. And sure enough, you know, the woman bought the product for a couple of years and the animal's health was extended beyond what the vets thought it would be. And it was beautiful, you know, and my sister had a dog that, again, same thing, had cancer. CBG, again, was one of the ones we used. And the dog actually would get excited when she would bring the bottle out and would look forward to it. And the dog is cancer-free. This is 3 years now. Pretty amazing. And just another thing I like to throw out there is that, you know, cannabis is legal in the state. We're talking about human health here. You know, you can't have a good time if you're not alive. So I think the left side is a hell of a lot healthier choice, because I'll guarantee you the one on the right will eventually lead to dysbiosis and disease and eventually death, which we're all going to do. But I would much rather live a long life and die quickly than die slowly over time, because that's what alcohol will do. That's what it was doing to me. I know we're all different. Maybe everybody else is different than me, but science says elsewhere. Okay. So we are back here in person. So understanding how all these systems work is now realizing that we're a superorganism. And if we are, there's a couple of things we really can do to help our health overall. One of them is our self-talk. Because if we're constantly criticizing ourselves and we're constantly thinking about if we're doing the right thing or am I not, you know, I go to a class on gut health and the next day, am I eating the right foods? Oh no, I shouldn't have ate that. No. You're putting your body in fight or flight. Realize that it's a journey. And whatever choices you make, it's okay. But start looking at a positive side to it, that, hey, I'm going to try this. Just one choice, just one additional thing, you know, and then it starts building on itself. Remember, we didn't go from being perfectly balanced to being out of balance overnight. And the journey back to it is a journey, and it never ends because it's always going to be changing. So to think we've got to do it overnight, no. You know, am I constantly working to improve it? Absolutely, because it's the most rewarding thing I could do for myself. You know, my responsibility is to take care of this body and mind first. And if I don't, then I have nobody else to blame for but myself. It's nobody else's responsibility. And now I'm learning how to do that. And if I could be healthy and happy and enjoy my life, why wouldn't I want to do that? Just by understanding the reality of what we are. And you know, we didn't know. When I was taught in school about stuff, they didn't know. They didn't know about all these colonies. To me, it's fascinating. It's like holy smokes, you know. So I used THC earlier in my life, and it helped me organize my thoughts, and it helped me be creative and do things, and you know, and I had to live with this kind of guilt that I was doing something illegal, but deep inside I knew that it worked for me and I felt great. And when I quit drinking alcohol, it was a big struggle because what is sobriety? You know, does that mean I cannot use a substance that alters my mood? And does it really alter my mood, or does it change my perception of reality, which is something that the human body has a system to do. It's not like we're putting a drug in the veins or taking a pill that is going to cause something that isn't as natural as this system is. There's a receptor system for it. So we have choices we can make, and that's what it's all about. It's little choices and doing them over and over and over again. And people say, well, you know, how do you choose what you're going to eat? And what do you eat as a typical daytime? You know, so an example of today was, first of all, I don't take any food into my body for the first 4 or 5 hours. Once I get up, I like to let the body continue its fast. I usually have plenty of energy because I'm eating enough fiber in my diet that you get fiber energy, you know, 8 hours after your meal. It's still coming into the body. So you're producing energy from different sources. Now, if I was eating high glycemic or sugary food to exist every day, then guess what? Come morning, I'm going to need energy because it's all gone. But if I put coal in my belly, if I start feeding microbes that one set's done, another one's done, and these guys are done, they got all kinds of energy, they build it up, I'm set for the next day. Then when I do start, I actually started and I don't eat the traditional breakfast. So what I had was my greens and beans around, I think it was around 10 o'clock in the morning. I broke my fast a little earlier, 10 o'clock. I had greens and bean soup. And then later in the day, around 1 o'clock, I stopped at a Mexican restaurant that had the ability to make a bowl with rice, 3 kinds of beans. I tell them I love beans. I don't want any meat. They always smile because beans are a lot cheaper than meat. So the profit margin's up, and I get all the veggies on there, every one I can. There's no dairy and no cheese, and that's a super healthy lunch. Avocado, great fat. You know, and then later in the day, what else did I have? I actually didn't eat anything more because I didn't want to be burdened with the energy it takes to digest. I wanted to have the energy to be able to do the presentation, and then I really don't need any more energy till tomorrow. And tomorrow I'll start all over. So diversity is the other thing. The other day, you know, one of the things I do is I'm on the go and I need to eat. So eating out is not always the healthiest, but I'll go to a place like Pile Mines and I'll order their salad, and I order it online, and they have unlimited things you can put on there. So I put every single thing on there possible, and it's got to have 30 different ingredients. So now I'm feeding all different microbes. There's all different colors in there, you know, no cheese, no dairy, you know, nice oil and vinegar on there, and boom, there's another meal with some nuts and seeds on it. Super healthy. So just trying to steer and be understanding that you've got these living beings inside of you, And if you feed them the right foods, they're going to take really good care of you. If you don't feed them the right foods, you're going to start to have deficiencies. You're going to have difficulty handling stress. You're going to have difficulty controlling your thoughts, anxiety, fear, all those things. We can curb it using the cannabinoid system. But what if we do a combination of both? What if we use this to assist us to bring this back up? And then once this gets back up, this is no longer needed to be relied on. We're going to get our health back to where it should be just totally on its own. To the point that, there's very few people in our society that take zero medications because commonplace, no, you're eating the wrong foods, you got cholesterol, let's take a pill, we'll knock it down. Well, if we're still producing the cholesterol and we're taking a pill to knock it down, we're still producing the cholesterol to begin with. Why not get the cause? And why not look at, what else we're finding the worst part about the plaque buildup is that we're not thinking of what we're doing. We're drinking water out of plastic bottles all the time. We're not getting microplastics embedded into the plaque in our veins and arteries. And this is the lifeblood of our whole system. So we need to start thinking of all the little things that we're doing. And if you just keep doing that, your life just keeps getting better and better and better. You'll just express life better and better each time. So I don't think we have any questions on our meeting group. We did have a question last week on ALS, asking if CBD and or THC help with conditions. And I did some research, and sure enough, it confirmed all these systems are interrelated. So with ALS, it helps with quite a few of the symptoms. In particular, a lot of the stiffness in the muscles, it's able to relieve some of that. There's actually a product, I believe it's called Sativex. It's been approved for treating ALS outside of the United States because it does have a portion of THC in it as well. But there's plenty of research showing credible evidence of response for somebody with ALS, which would be my understanding of the endocannabinoid system. Would just make all the sense in the world, because you've got systems that are out of balance because of wherever the origin is, which can maybe it's in the gut, and then the endocannabinoid system can try to bring a lot of those systems back into a state of homeostasis or balance. We will be taking a break here. We're probably going to try to do one or two more before Christmas, just to kind of get your head set into how can I go through the holidays, how can I be strong and trying to stay on a program, and what are some healthy choices to start making. And it's a journey, and be easy on yourself. Just taking the time to watch this video says that you've vested time and interest into your own health. And if you're willing to do that, pat yourself on the back, because most people are just looking for somebody else to do it, and you're taking ownership. So, and one of the greatest things we can be doing is starting to feel the emotions that really promote gut health, like gratitude. Every night before you go to sleep, if you thought about 5 things you're grateful for, or something that you were really grateful happened with somebody in your life that day, that gratitude will put your mind at ease, will cause the stress response to relieve itself, which will automatically cause the microbes to start to do their symphony of work they got to do all night long. And they won't be stressed out thinking about the stuff that doesn't matter. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you soon.